Check, 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 check. We're here.
1, 2, 1, 2. One Nycha in the house. All right, all right.
What happened? Okay.
You good? You good?
Yeah.
Comfortable? All right.
We in the building.
Yes, yes. Check us
Share,
out.
share, share. One Nycha in the house.
One Nycha, one Nycha.
Here we go.
And stop. Hey, how are you guys?
All right, all right.
You're here with One Nycha. We're here with Saundrea Coleman, Stan Morse,
Yes.
and Rock Logic is not here today, but we're going to be hanging out. I'm ESP, and I'm just going to be hanging out with everyone for a moment. And you all look beautiful, but you know what? Let's figure out what's going on with our host today. Saundrea, what's happening, darling?
Hey all, it's good to see you all once again. Miss you, Rock. Miss you, miss you, miss you, but we're
Yes,
in
sir,
capable
Rock.
hands.
Yes.
We're definitely in
ESP
capable
in the
hands
house.
today. So my week, starting off, how my week was normal with the UES for BLM, you know, dealing with that, the vigil every day at 7 p.m., 86 in Eastern Avenue at Carl Schutz Park. Constant check-ins with my seniors in the five buildings on the campus of Holmes, Towers, and Isaac houses. Had Shauna Kay out with us at the UES for BLM.
Wow.
She was out there with us back to back last weekend, this week. So
Great.
it was good to have her. And I actually coming off of a 2-day training with Eastside Institute on the how of performative activism, and it was so powerful. It was people from all over the world, and it was just a phenomenal event, and it ended today at 2:30. It was a 2-day event.
Is that with Sika?
It's with people that's affiliated.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so, but it's totally,
Okay.
you know, but with them. So shout out to them, that family. Enjoyed the first Friday with Councilmember Ben Kalos,
Okay.
which he does on the first Friday of every month. And it's
Okay.
very nice that he, you know, we used to come together before this pandemic, and we get to sit down with our council member and we have conversations, and, you know, we get to talk, air out, he shares some news with us and everything. So, you know, that's how I'm starting my month off, is starting off good and
Great.
just looking forward to what's ahead and the work that we got to do.
Awesome,
All right,
awesome,
all right,
awesome,
all right,
awesome.
all right.
And hey, Saundrea, our president has COVID.
Isn't that something?
Stan, what's happening with you, darling?
Well, before I get into my week, I remember Malcolm X said when Kennedy was killed, he said the chickens coming home to roost, and that created a whole big stir back then. You know, and I do wish the president well and hope he recovers. But it is quite amazing
Yes.
and quite ironic, you know, that he would catch the virus, you know, basically because he's not following the rules that the government says we all should follow.
That's right.
You know, so when you don't follow the rules, nobody is above the rules. Nobody's above the law. Nobody's above science.
Well, it's
you know,
not even
so
about rules, right? It's about putting on a mask.
right. I mean, it's
You
very
know?
simple.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
real
right.
simple stuff. And right now, we're in Astoria. which is now spiking, here in New York, so.
I'm back masked up. I'm not playing.
Right, so I'm gonna put my mask on, and I've kept it on. We can't relax because it's really growing.
Well, even in this setting, I'm keeping mine on.
And you know what? People are going to find out that this is real. I've lost several family members to this disease, and people are really going to find out that it's real now.
Sure.
And listen, I want to segue into a thought process because you can make change if you get out and did you see the mask? Get out and vote.
Put mine on fully.
2020. Vote. That's right. That's how you make the change. You got a big vote coming up.
Yes.
And that leads us into.
Before he goes in there, I want to say one thing. Trump, he was there with me. He could speak to it. So we had a bunch of food delivered over at Queensbridge. Shout out to Sugar Ray for continuing to build that effort. And inside the box of food was a letter from Trump. Which was incredible. So he's had nothing to do with the delivery of food to the folks in Queensbridge at this time. So for him to put a letter in the box, in a sense taking credit for the work that the locals in the community have done was amazing. So we had to debate whether to take his letter out the box and then give it to the residents. But what we did is explain to them, the food is for you, but we're not supportive of Trump. And so it was just ironic that the boxes would be filled with his name, his signature, and it was told to us that it would not be delivered if his letter wasn't in the box.
Wow.
So it's from.
I mean, I guess the USDA has something to do with it, right?
Yeah.
But
just like the stimulus checks, right?
Right. It's like it's like the reach of him and what he's trying to do, and I guess trying to siphon off votes or whatever,
Of course.
is really outrageous. So I want to say that, and then last but not least, we have the rent strike meeting or rally on the 29th of this month in front of 250 Broadway. So folks who want to join or support those who are going on rent strike, and I want to stress we're not pushing nobody to do a rent strike. If you are in that mindset, we want to make sure we provide legal protection for you, so that you're not out there by yourself. So for those who are interested, 250 Broadway, 4 o'clock, come out and support. We're going to be talking about it a lot leading up to it. But do not let the folks who are brave enough to take that step stand out there by themselves. Whether you're going to strike or not, support them.
Okay. All right. So, Stan, tell us about your guest.
All right. This young man definitely impressed me over the last few months. I got to work with him. First thing I was shocked it was his age. And I asked him, how old you are? He told me he's 21 or something like that, I believe. Which totally blew my mind. Then he told me he's running for city council, which again blew my mind. So I'm just impressed, that someone so young could be involved. And more than running for office, he's out there every day. When we handing out food, he's there. In Ravenswood, he's there in Queensbridge. He's out there, and thankfully for him, I'm getting old now, so all these boxes I can't lift them. So this young man was lifting the boxes and carrying stuff and doing all kinds of things out there. So I really respect his work ethic and what he brings to the community. And his name is Lorenzo Brea, and 21 years old, running for city council.
Let's hear from him.
Thank you guys for the invite. I really love being here with y'all. I appreciate Stan, all the work that the community's done, and the support that's helped me get here to this point. So yes, I am 21. I'm from Ravenswood, and so I think just harping on Stan's reaction to me running for council, it does surprise a lot of people that somebody so young could be involved at this level, have this much knowledge about what we as a city can do as in any level of representation, whether that's Assembly, State Senate, Congress. But it shouldn't be a surprise. We've lived it. People from the neighborhood. I'm from Ravenswood. People from Queensbridge, Astoria houses, Woodside houses. We've lived through these problems, and as soon as you go through those experiences, you're either provided the opportunity to learn about what puts your neighborhood, your neighbors, your family in those circumstances, and then how to go about making that change that you want to see in your community, or sometimes you get caught in the cycle of oppression that really just ravages our communities. And I'm grateful that I received those opportunities and that knowledge. I went to high school up the block from Queensbridge at Academy of American Studies. I was involved in participatory budgeting to get some laptops in the school. Went to LaGuardia Community College to receive an associate's degree in political science. And at the same time, I was the director of community affairs for a council member in North Brooklyn, District 37.
Okay.
And after that council member vacated his seat, I got a good idea of like how it was to really just have me and one other person. We both did the same jobs, constituent services and community affairs, all the way up to the point where it was just us two in the office. And so I really got a good idea of what it takes and what resources are available to the council that we couldn't necessarily leverage because we didn't have the power of a council member, but we were in the seat and we saw these problems falling in front of our eyes during a pandemic, during a census year. And that gave me a good idea of some of the problems that are happening, in the district where I grew up. And, making that change after the speaker's office or whoever laid us off, I decided, let me go back home and make these changes in our community as we start. And so, working with Sugar Ray, working with Stan, working with the Justice for All Coalition, is a lot of beautiful things that we're making happen in the community.
You mentioned participatory budgeting. I'm aware of it. Can you explain to our viewers what that is? Because I'm familiar with it with my council member, but a lot of people are not. And as constituents, they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. So participatory budgeting is a process in which there's $1 or $2 million that are given up to a vote within the community to provide constituents the opportunity to vote on what a certain capital project that they want to see happen. And I think the rule on these participatory budgeting, projects is if you can kick it, participatory budgeting can fund it. So, I think it's a great opportunity, and I think in theory it's a great opportunity to give the community like a direct voice in what they want to see funded and how that money gets used in their neighborhoods. But I do particularly have a problem with, I think the reputation that it's given, I think it's given high praise, but we do have a problem where there's sometimes, the people who have traditionally always had the ability to be engaged in their community. They have that structure, they have infrastructure, they've been part of the community board, they know what's going on in the community, but there's a great amount of people that aren't involved in that process. And so as we do provide more opportunities for our community to have input on how their money is used, I think that we should also be at the same time striving to engage more people at every turn, just to make sure that that's an equitable process. And then we'd find out that there's many more things that we want to see in our community, not just $1 million or $2 million, billions of dollars that we deserve and we need.
So now you ask, since you've always the issue of money, I got to ask anyone that sits in that seat, are you looking to take any money from any real estate developers or anyone like that, or is your campaign strictly grassroots from the community?
Oh no, yeah, I'm not accepting any money from real estate, special interests, lobbyists. My fundraising numbers up to this point, I've raised more money in this fundraising deadline than any other candidate.
That's amazing.
Over 50% from within the district.
That's pretty amazing. Okay.
And the most individual contributors with the lowest contribution size average.
Wow.
It really does show how long people have been waiting for this. And as I've been growing up, I've always been involved in politics. I always thought that electoral politics was the answer. And through electoral politics, you find out how to create greater community politics and greater community engagement. It's just the way the system's set up right now. A lot of power has been given to elected officials. So I said, why not take advantage of that and give it back to the community? Go ahead.
So I'm hearing what you're saying regarding your fundraising and how good it's been. You evidently been present in these communities, correct? Because I know a lot of people run for office and they show up and pander for votes, but you have to be present first for us to want to invest in you. That's very important.
Absolutely.
Especially for Nycha residents, right? That people feel that we don't vote. I'm a Nycha resident, that we don't vote, but we do vote. But I don't want to see anybody coming around just to pander for a vote. I want them to be with me giving out some food or being present in my community. And by what you're saying that they're investing in you, whether it's there or further, people can see your work. And all of y'all out here that ain't doing nothing, y'all better look at Lorenzo. But yeah, being present, doesn't that make a difference?
Absolutely. I think that even on top of being present, because I think that at some point, especially with the momentum that's coming now with the left, people are realizing that they can't just, come last minute, raise millions of dollars and get elected.
Right.
You really need to do a lot of work. But on top of that, I'm a kid from Ravenswood, and I've grown up around people and I've experienced some things that I don't think the other candidates have in my race. And there's a whole bunch of them. There's about 15 candidates. And when you get in a crowded race like that, I mean, you try to look for, who has lived through what the most marginalized people in the community have lived through. And from the time when I was a 5-year-old ducking bullets under a slide in front of my building, I think it gives me the insight and the ability and the knowledge and the capability to represent on top of everything else that it takes to be an elected official and a politician. And so, I urge my opponents, I urge everybody in the community to try to look for those people who have lived through that. And especially when there's Nycha in your district,
Exactly.
that's a really particular environment that you're raised in, that you live in. Over policing, lack of repairs to buildings, lack of open space, polluted air. There's all types of factors that affect people in Nycha that make, and Nycha is 90% black and brown people.
Right.
So it's trying to acknowledge the problems that we've been facing in those communities and realize, who needs to represent those areas. It takes more than just being present. You have to really, look at yourself, look at your neighbors, look at everybody around you, and figure out what is the best for this community.
What's your plans for Nycha? What are you going to bring to the table if you get elected as a city council member?
Yeah, I think a lot of the work that the Justice for All Coalition is doing is aligned with what I'm representing, which is first and foremost finding a way to bring repairs to Nycha. We have Nycha buildings are in disrepair, dilapidated, and we've been over the years begging the Fed to give more money to Nycha, but we're done asking. Now we're going to take advantage of all the resources that we have, and as a city council member, the Justice for All Coalition, as well as myself, we've been working with the Speaker's office and other city council representatives, trying to find out how to make sure that those repairs come during this winter. I mean, I'm done with the marathon talk. We can't keep acting like living bottom line living conditions are a marathon that we have to get. So a couple of these funds are jails. The jail in Manhattan already got struck down by the courts.
Right.
And another one, the BQX. It's a slow moving trolley to connect Brooklyn and Queens. I mean, Hallett's Cove on the corner of Astoria, right next to Astoria houses, the same price that it takes to renovate that area with playgrounds and security and community spaces is exactly how much money it took to repair Astoria houses boilers. So we're looking now it's beyond that. It's saying you're not going to get any money from the Fed. What are you doing as a city council member to make sure that we have livable conditions in our apartments? And now we have to really be bold on that stance and realize that there's a lot of work on the ground that you need. Justice for All, myself, Stan, and a whole bunch of community members are doing to make sure that people realize what's happening and realize what they need to do.
So, what message would you give to young people? I know you was with Kenny Carter and Fathers in the Hood. We had a big march 2 weeks ago to try to curb the gun violence, and I understand that there's been more shootings in Queensbridge since we marched. And I think maybe one in Ravenswood as well. So, what message do you have for the youth, who are watching your campaign? You're 21 years old, you're involved, but yet we have kids out here shooting each other. So what message do you have for the youth?
That is a very difficult question. I think that if I could speak to them, I'm not sure if they're listening to this podcast or if they'll realize that I'm running for council or anything like that. But if I can't speak to them, I'd say, how much love do you think that the community is receiving? How much funding, how much resources have you, your brothers, your friends that you've grown up with, how have they fallen through the cracks? How have elected officials failed you? And more than anything, what can you do about that at this point? And so, if you're taking me as any example, I'm an example of what you can do at this point. You have the opportunity, me and Sugar Ray and all the people in Queensbridge, we don't have a lot, but we take all of our energy and we try to put it into what the community needs, whether that be diapers, food, clothing. So, if there's anything, look to your friends, look to the people right next to you, find out what they need, and probably many other people in your neighborhood and in your building are facing the same troubles. So if you can solve their needs, you can solve a whole bunch more, and we're willing to work with you. We want to work with you. That's all we want. So come. I mean, we're waiting on the Hill on Fridays, 11 a.m.
And you had an event this past Saturday, I believe it was, right? You had an
Yes.
event in Queensbridge. We tell everybody what that event was about.
Yeah, so this past Sunday I had a public
Sunday.
safety town hall, which was a community conversation, rather, about peace, police, and black liberation. And so I wanted to engage some members of the community about what the police has meant to them, what the police has done or hasn't done in their communities, and how do we think that we can get to true peace and black liberation within our communities, and especially within Nycha, just because it's such a concentrated area of black and brown people. And so, there we found out that, I've already, going, flyering buildings and going to events, every person that I've ever asked about the NYPD, are they racist, never fails. They are racist. Without a doubt, they've been racist as long as anybody's ever known. And somehow, you still find older people, usually, that want to defend the NYPD because that's the only options we've been given as a community. Either brutal over-policing or no police and senseless violence as a result. But with over-policing, not only brutality comes a suppression of the real problems in our communities. The lack of employment, the lack of education, the problems with our housing, the problems with our health. And so, through that town hall, I'm also trying to make sure people understand the possibilities that we have for our communities. The creation of new agencies or the incorporation of new organizations that can do that work, like 696 Build Queensbridge. They're doing great work, engaging these young people who, maybe still hustling, maybe still, on the corners, just waiting all night. And so, that work is just as essential as anything that we do during the daytime. And so that's why, I was out last night giving food out with Sugar Ray up until about 1 a.m., just giving food to the homeless, also giving food to people that were just in the neighborhood. And even last night, Sugar Ray holding a poetry event where we provided food and we provided a space for people to speak on expose their talents. I don't think there's enough of opportunities of that. And if we are able to connect how much money the NYPD has in our neighborhoods, being probably the most well-funded agency in Nycha, and we take that money and take those resources to something more productive that'll actually create true peace and black liberation in our communities, I think that's the conversation that we need to continue to have.
I want to remind you that you're watching One Nycha with Saundrea Coleman, Stan Morse, Rock Logic, who isn't with us today but sends his hello. And we're talking to Lorenzo Brea, NYC City Council candidate, District 26. If you can't sit with us for the whole broadcast, we want to let you know that you do have the option to watch a rebroadcast on Spotify, Facebook, One Nycha at Facebook, One Nycha at YouTube, on their YouTube channel as well. You can click like and subscribe. We're also on Anchor, Breaker, Radio Public, Google Podcast, and you're watching us live on Facebook right now. Once again, we are with Lorenzo Brea.
I want to jump in regarding when you're speaking about the police department. I served 24 years. I used to supervise payroll. I'm medically retired. As an organizer with UES for BLM, Black Lives Matter, we chant and we want to defund the police, not just NYPD, but defund police throughout these United States. Also, one of my big things is to abolish qualified immunity. What is your take on those two?
I think that, yes, we should absolutely abolish qualified immunity, and defunding the police is absolutely necessary. But I also want to acknowledge that it's a conversation that isn't as easy as saying defund the police. It is an actual conversation that we need to sit down and really, go within our mindsets and our mentalities about what the police has done and how long they've existed in our communities. If the police is all we've ever known for 60, 70, 80 years, I don't expect people to just be like, okay, defund the police. We really have to find out and create these solutions as we go as to what would be, the reallocation of those
Right.
resources, where would they go?
Right.
And so, I particularly I'm putting it on myself to create those conversations, but they should have been they should have been happening. So now we're just taking advantage of the opportunity and the momentum that comes with that movement. Yeah, go ahead.
You might want to tell folks what qualified immunity is and what that represents. If Saundrea, you might want to share with folks what that's about.
It's you can actually sue not just a police officer, but elected official like a governor or something. You can actually sue them civilly. So there's a protection that they have, and that's something we want to abolish, because if you have them not under that protection, we will have better governance all the
Sure.
way around.
Sure.
Even with the NYPD. So, yeah.
And I think it should be done. I mean, there's so little accountability, and I go back to what Nycha residents deal with. You can't get an answer from nobody, and that flows all through our government. You can't really get these elected officials to come out and say their positions on much of anything,
Right.
because most of them are really more concerned about running for office and staying in office and campaigning
Right.
than really representing the community and taking tough choices and making tough decisions.
Yeah.
They may cause their votes, but in the end of the day, we suffer.
Yeah, like you
suffer.
had y'all are doing the rent strike.
Yes.
The rent strike came to us, or we had options: rent strike, sue, NYCHA, HP action. We collectively voted for HP action lawsuit, housing parts and Carmen areas. But why do we have to do that for our repairs?
Right.
This is how bad our government is, that we have to go to court. We've been in court since December 13th of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
Even during this pandemic, we have virtual hearings. But why do we have to sue? And during this suit, we discovered so much. Problems with the elevators, things with our boilers, all these infractions, infestation, rat holes outside. The city has rats, right? But it's really bad. So,
Yeah.
all of this stuff we found out due to this lawsuit. Now, if we didn't, and our elevators are about 3 to 4 years old, so they're not old. What's up with the warranty? There's so much we're trying to find out through our attorneys, but this is crazy. Like, you have to actually go to court with your landlord, NYCHA, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. And we're looking to do the lawsuit as well. I say that we're trying to do as much stuff on the wall as possible. So there's the strike, then there's a lawsuit. We want to educate folks on some of the things that we learned last week with our phenomenal guests who spoke about the HUD regulations and things of that nature. So we want to put that out there because that's where real power comes from. And I learned a lot. I had to go back and listen to that show again.
Claudia.
From Claudia C.C. Perez and learn
Give us some.
again. Give her yes. I mean, it was so informative. So we're going to be doing some of those workshops in Queensbridge and in Ravenswood, because so many of the resident council presidents, as she said, are unaware of really what's going on. I mean, they're clueless, about the HUD regulations and the true power. And so therefore, they're not giving that information out to the residents. And some of them are kind of reluctant. I know the resident association or resident council president at Ravenswood is thinking about it, but you could tell, and you're out there with her, and it's hard. It's really difficult to have them really sit down and get into these conversations.
Yeah.
And I guess they feel that, we're pointing the finger at them, in some sense, but if you're not giving the residents the information, then like, what are you doing in that position? Because they need to know before their properties are privatized,
Exactly.
By one person who represents a whole development, and if that individual is not well informed, well, then what does that say?
It's easy to take advantage of them, right? Because they don't know any better.
Yeah, I think that NYCHA, as well as the entire city, recognizes how the tenant associations or the resident council.
Yeah, we learned last week. Call them out of right name. Yes.
Associations don't really serve as the structure for community engagement or resident input. So I think that beyond repairs being first and foremost, because nobody should have to live like this. And as much as the city council has a say in the possibilities and the funding that we could provide to NYCHA, I think that creating a structure for true community engagement within every single building and every single apartment, creating that opportunity is absolutely necessary. So beyond, the repairs and what the city council can do, I think resident management corporations can provide that as well. And so that's something that Justice for All is working on. and is, you know, a big aspect of what I think can solve the issues within Nycha. And so I'm not sure if your viewers or you guys know about resident management corporations, but they can provide anything from, you know, security to building maintenance, as well as engagement of the community as do tenant associations do. So I think that we can go above and beyond on our expectations of what those corporations or what our management can do, and I think that people within Nycha can take that power for themselves.
Yeah, it's about stakeholder power,
right.
Instead of city to city doing it, right?
Right,
It's power
exactly.
us. Who knows better for us than us?
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Nycha residents are going through the pain, the suffering, you know. And so, yeah, I think they would definitely do a better job of managing
course.
because it's where they live. And them jobs will flow to our folks and to our community. We're talking about billions of dollars, you know, and I think the Nycha residents can do it, but we got to be involved. You can't have a resident manage a corporation and not be involved in running that corporation. You know, you can't take it like the resident association meetings where folks don't go. It will not work. It will not work. It needs full resident engagement in order for that to work. So for those who are listening, you know, we gotta step it up. We need more leadership.
Just imagine the median income if people had better jobs. I mean, there's a lot of municipality workers that come out at Nycha, don't get it twisted.
Yes.
You know,
That's right.
from correction officers, NYPD, there's officers and so forth. You know, people are working in these elected officials' office, you know, with these decent ranks, you know, decent titles. But imagine if the median rent would not be $400. It would
Absolutely.
be much higher, 30% of their income. It would change the portfolio, right? Because
Yep.
there's more money coming in to do the repairs and so forth. Because you know, the rent generates income as well, right?
Absolutely.
Not just the funding, but it's also the rent. So if they give the people these opportunities, you know, I hear a lot of OSHA training. You know, that's in different places, but even some of our people don't even know about that.
Right.
So.
So tell me, Lorenzo, what are your thoughts on? I know in Long Island City, we are being flooded, you know, by private developers who are coming in to do whatever they want to do, which is make more money, you know, while we suffer. So what are your thoughts on some of the private development going on in Long Island City, and what do you think about it?
I mean, I think that, you know, we shouldn't be subsidizing or creating any tax incentives for developers, nonprofit or for-profit. They're going to make money off of it either way. I think that we need to create true public ownership of these lands, and you know, that's even if we don't have the mode. If we do already have public ownership, we should definitely not be selling any of it. These are assets, whether that be air rights or public,
Exactly.
you know, land. So we need to take hold and keep these assets within our power. You know, those are the things that create power for us as a city and as a people. And keeping those within our ownership, I think is absolutely necessary.
Well, I tell you, every time I hear this young man speak, I'm impressed. I know at the age of 21, and I was pretty politically involved and motivated, but I was not nearly as knowledgeable. I had book knowledge, but I did not have the knowledge that this young man has, you know, on how city works, how government works. So it's very impressive. I gotta say, I'm very impressed.
Even beyond that, I was also at a march against ICE yesterday with a whole bunch of community organizers, part of a no-name group, and so they are even interested on finding out what's going to happen with this eviction moratorium that's, you know, pretty much not going to stop anybody from getting evicted. There's so many exceptions to this eviction moratorium that a lot of people who are struggling to pay the rent may very well get evicted during this moratorium.
So speak on that, because I know I heard that we was gonna. I think they delayed it to January, right?
Delayed it to
So you're
January.
saying that there's people that might be evicted anyway during this so-called moratorium?
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of exceptions to the rules and saying that some excuses or some reasons as to why they couldn't pay rent won't stand in court. And so, you know, if it's just like a timeline of employment, if you know, they're saying like, oh, you had enough time to make up money to pay the rent, you know, that may be considered an exception. And there's a whole bunch of more stuff that, you know, has to do with the law in which not enough people are protected. And so they create this eviction moratorium, but it doesn't actually protect enough, you know, tenants or residents all across the city. And so, you know, the organizers in this march against ICE are scared. They're saying like, what can we do in the case that a whole bunch of people are homeless? And I think that takes into question.
Can we get a little more into the ICE situation?
Sure.
Go more in depth into that.
Okay, yeah. So the march against ICE was due to the information that was released about medical professionals or just medics or I don't know, some kind of doctors that were functioning in ICE detention centers that were sterilizing women as well as performing mass hysterectomies.
Wow.
So, you know, when that information came about, we realized that this is really a war against people of color in the United States, and especially against illegal immigrants, which make up a great portion of our city, pay bunches of taxes, and are really part of our community. You know, these are our neighbors. And so when, you know, something like that happens at a national level, we want to make sure that in our communities, especially, you know, this march through Jackson Heights, that we represent, and we really show how much we stand against it and that we think that ICE shouldn't exist.
So these things are happening when people were detained by ICE? These things were happening?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, and they wouldn't even notify the women that they were performing
That's incredible.
hysterectomies. So,
Okay.
you know,
Then there's a language
it's really
barrier.
scary information
Wow.
that was
There's a
being
language
shared.
barrier.
That
so,
really,
yeah.
that's a whole show right there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to step back a little more. When you were talking about the excuses, what possibly could not be a good excuse for not paying your rent if nobody's working?
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of legal loopholes that are probably, you know, I don't have a JD, but there's a whole bunch of lawyers, especially DSA, is exposing that there's so many exceptions as to the rules that they're creating in terms of the moratorium, and how closely that's tied, whether, you know, there was already a problem with evictions. So if there's more exceptions to this rule, even though there's a moratorium, or even if it's at the same point that it was before the pandemic, I think that that's something that needs to be determined as to how far and how many people are protected by this new moratorium. Because we don't take it into question. You know, we say if there's an eviction moratorium, nobody gets evicted. But when you go to court, that becomes a different story in which lawyers can make a case as to why this eviction is still necessary.
And one of the problems with that is too, they need to just cancel rent, cancel
the rent,
cancel rent and mortgages for people that
Yes.
cannot pay.
Right.
Because all you're doing is pushing it back, and the rent is still mounting up.
Getting
so what's
bigger.
going to happen?
Right.
If no one comes through, or they don't cancel rent, you're still going to see the same thing. You're going to be
Right.
in court fighting, or unless they're going to give you some type of breakdown, but who knows? But I'm thankful that we live in a city or a state, you know, a democratic state, because I've seen evictions done in other states, you know, which is just sad. It literally will make you cry. You
So
see them
where are people going?
That becomes a big
living
question.
in their cars, or if you don't have family, I mean,
That was the question that we were discussing after the march, because the city does have power of eminent domain. And with all these vacancies throughout the city, you know, people, they left Manhattan and they don't care about New York City anymore. And now we have all this money that the city put into private developers to, you know, have these hotels, have these huge buildings with these outrageous rents, but we didn't invest in our communities. And so if we have this power of eminent domain, we're able to take advantage of these vacant properties, vacant lands, and then build housing on them, or take advantage of the housing that's already built, that is just vacant and empty, waiting there. And we can say, no, we want to provide housing for everybody, and especially during COVID. I mean, me and Sugar Ray, we went out feeding the homeless people, because there's a whole bunch of shelters around Queensbridge. And so we interviewed a man named Lewis, and so he had schizophrenia, and he's been in a shelter for a while. And so when he got transferred to a hotel room, he says like the voices started going away, and life started becoming a little bit more normal. So during COVID, you know, after COVID, you know, homeless shelters were a hotbed for COVID, and then it was getting all this bad rap. DHS acted, putting them in hotels such as the Lucerne, famous in the Upper West Side, that they were fighting against. But it's really providing a little bit more normalcy for the homeless, and more opportunities for them to be reintegrated into, you know, society, because they're just deemed evil, you know, perpetrators in their neighborhoods. And so, you know, that's an example of what we can do for a lot of people across the city who may be evicted, especially in the cold. I mean, like it's no way for them to live during a pandemic where they may be jobless, maybe dealing with mental health issues.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just that we should as a city be providing more services and
Yes.
more
It's
opportunities.
really bad. I was in a neighborhood, 2 neighborhoods down from here, East Elmhurst, which was one of my own neighborhoods when I was growing up. And there are people standing on lines, and the lines are going around the blocks, like for 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks for these churches to get food. And these are they were affluent neighborhoods. I mean, it's shocking what's happening. Just even before COVID, it was shocking.
Yeah.
Now, how much more so is it going to be, especially with the holidays coming up
Oh,
and
my God.
the cold coming up, and then you still have COVID, and now we have the flu, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's really overwhelming what's
hot
happening
spots.
right here.
I think
Yeah.
people often suffer in silence. So I think these issues have existed for a very long time, but it's just that COVID, they just opened our eyes to them.
It's
Now they're right in front of our
exacerbated.
face.
Yeah.
And we can't get away from, how many homeless people there are. Now they're in hotels all across the city, and neighborhoods that have never even acknowledged the problem of homelessness. Now they have to deal with it every day that they come outside of their door.
Right. They don't want them there.
So I mean, these issues are, yeah.
And I just want to stress, the city pays like $3,000 or more to put a family in a hotel, which is a waste of money. And then in the hotels and some of the homeless shelters are horrible. I was in a homeless shelter with my family at one point, and they was paying $3,000 for us to live in a room. They had rats and all kind of stuff. So that's a total waste of money. Why don't you take that money and really build some affordable housing instead of paying off a hotel owner who's profiting?
Of course.
He's making more money through homelessness than he is to rent out his hotel. So for
And
them,
my mortgage is $2,700.
right, it's insane.
Come on.
They're
You
paying
pay
more to
mortgages.
house a homeless people than people actually paying the mortgage. So it's a system that's broken.
Right.
It's out of control. I know in Queensbridge and where we work, it's an outrage all around the city. They kick these folks out of the shelter in the daytime and say you got to leave.
Right.
So now you're walking around in the daytime with nothing to do, no services, no programs. You just out. And of course you're gonna cause a havoc in the community. I heard one older guy got into a fight in Queensbridge because they're out like 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So they're not even keeping a curfew. And we don't want to make this us against homelessness. Homelessness is something that we advocate for too. So it's not one against the other. You need to provide real services for homeless folks and build some real affordable housing that's affordable, like for somebody making $20,000, not affordable to somebody making $65,000, and which nobody in the community even makes that. That's not the median income. So it's a broken system.
Yeah, and sadly, they end up sometimes in public housing buildings in the exit.
Yes.
And in a building that has heat, of course,
Right, right.
So it's warm,
Right.
okay? Or they're on the subways.
Yep.
But then, the police and, there's homeless outreach, of course. They shouldn't be criminalized.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And let me just speak to the mayor and the governor of New York.
Speak
Yes,
on
girl,
it. Speak
There
on it.
is, I coined something in the beginning of this pandemic called incubator facilities. They are nursing homes, they are shelters, and they are the prisons and jails. And you all need to take care of those most vulnerable people because they are dying in there. There was a
Absolutely.
nursing home that I served at. I can't even say the amount of people that died, but it was well over 100. Okay, and it's ridiculous. And people in the prisons, and they're hiding from the families what's going on in the prisons.
Sure.
And then with the shelters, if they're there, what happens with them? So step up and do your job. Like
Right.
you are responsible for the people.
That's right.
So,
That's
Mr.
right.
Mayor, we say,
The fuck are you doing?
Whoa, okay. That's a
I mean,
yes, I said it.
all right. And
it ain't even wrong. It ain't even wrong today. Like really?
I'm sorry.
she brought the
Right
spirit
behind
out
you.
here.
It's when he puts me in the seat, I
you
get
turn
out of
in,
control,
okay.
But it's a shame, and I'm afraid, to be perfectly honest, as to what it's going to look like in a few months. I'm scared, and I'm sure everybody in New York is scared, and everybody in the country scared. We're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Here in New York, where we had it under control, and all of a sudden I'm hearing we may have to shut down, and we're going backwards. So it's serious.
When
It's
the
serious.
governor started talking about nursing homes, it was because of an email that I sent to him. The
hear you.
next day,
Give her the beat.
he was talking about the nursing homes because I said,
He said, give you the beat, girl.
Here they be, yeah.
I said, if you don't address this, but it wasn't much done. But still, he started addressing it right after. I have my receipts because I am the receipt queen, okay?
That's right, that's
but,
right.
You know, enough is enough. You know, people are suffering, and they need to deal with this.
Yes. Yes.
They need to deal with
I
this.
think that you know, we're dealing with all these issues, right? That COVID has absolutely exacerbated. But I think that the one aspect of life in New York City that nobody can escape, especially people in Nycha, just because, you know, we're super over policed, is the NYPD and how much money they're given. And so, you know, when we try to combat these issues around, you know, health, homelessness, homes in disrepair,
Mental
or
health.
public safety, you know, the NYPD is given so much money, but it just serves as a last resort. You know, people in their communities don't think that it provides, you know, a means for engagement. And, you know, if we take advantage of those resources that are given to, you know, a super well-funded agency that somehow does nothing productive in our communities, I think if we take advantage of those resources and really use it to really find a way to create structure for community engagement, you know, sustainable community engagement, I think that that's when we'll find that so many people can be involved in these answers. They have the input to create answers to homelessness, health crises, you know, employment opportunities. Like, all of these things can be piled up on top of each other if we're given a structure for community engagement, which, you know, right now, nothing touches every single New Yorker like the way NYPD does, and especially nothing touches Black and brown people in the city the way NYPD does. And
That's true.
you know, part of that, especially in the 114 precinct,
Call
you
them
know,
out.
114 precinct covers Astoria, Woodside, Queensbridge, and Ravenswood houses. They have had the most stop and frisks than any other precinct in Queens. 90% of those stops involving people of color, but over 60% of them, around 65% of those, are completely innocent, couldn't even give a summons. So it's like, when we look at those statistics like that, we're realizing that we're putting our Black and brown, especially the youth, in danger. You know,
Yeah.
we're antagonizing them with a force that just
Yeah.
wants to threaten their freedom at every turn.
Yeah.
And unless we make a change for those, give them the opportunity to lead this movement. You know, like Stan was young at one point. I bet he was leading this movement. You know, had a lot more energy to pick up those boxes. The same way I'm doing
yes,
right now.
yes, yep.
And so, you know, if we give those opportunities and we show them that there's a way out, but we can't do that if there's so much money being given to the only agency that wants to threaten their freedom.
Yeah.
I know in Queensbridge, which kills me. I played basketball, and it kills me. There's a cop. There's a cop car in front of the basketball court, like, all the time. You know, and I didn't recall that growing up in my neighborhood. When I'm playing ball, and there's a cop car just placed outside, just sitting there. It's very unsettling. You're like, what are you sitting there doing? Like, what are you watching? Like, you looking to find a crime? You know, so I know the kids are really growing up in a tough environment, having to deal with that, and at an early age being afraid of the police. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, we had police brutality when I was coming up for sure, but it just seems different now.
Yeah.
It just seems different now.
Two big problems: drugs and guns. Handle it, government.
Right.
Drugs and guns.
And
That's right.
we can make that ask to our community if we make it possible. You know, like you know, this concentration right here, if we involve, you know, the people who are watching, you know, take advantage of the opportunity, this knowledge and the energy that you may have in this pandemic to really, you know, leverage the free time that these youth may have. You know, they're out in the streets and they're trying to make it happen for their families and for themselves. But if we really show them that, you know, there's a possibility that we can have a whole bunch of money and you can have those jobs to really go out and knock on your neighbors' doors and make sure that they understand that there's a way out as well, I think that'll be very powerful.
Yeah, and the community centers too. A
Yeah.
lot of them are not open. So
Yeah.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
fund them, open them up for our kids.
That's right.
You
That's
know,
right.
only in the summer in my neighborhood. I'm from Isaac Houses, and shout out to Homes Isaacs Coalition. But, you know, in the summer, except for this summer because of the pandemic, you know, it's open 7 days a week, the center, to the evening, and they even give them dinner.
And that's
you know?
happening now?
And no,
That
because of the
was-
pandemic,
okay,
right?
right,
For
right,
the last
before the-
couple of years.
mhm.
So, you know, shout out to Greg Morris that runs the Isaac Center. But that was great. I mean, my son, when he was home, he would, what you gonna do? I'm going down there to eat and see what they're gonna have. And they could take the
Right.
games down there, the systems, you know, and they were safe. Right? And
Sure.
don't we want our youth to be safe? We want them to survive. We want them to live.
Sure.
So stop disinvesting in Black and brown communities.
right.
That's all it is. Stop disinvesting.
And I know in Ravenswood, where you come from as well, there's a community center right there in the I guess that's the community center right on 35th Street. And I was shocked when I went in there and saw what they had in there. There was boxing, there's a boxing ring in there, there's a music studio in there, there's all kinds of things that's going completely unutilized. And you have all these folks in Queensbridge and in Ravenswood, young folks with nothing to do and becoming violent, but you got a facility right there that can't get funding to be open. It's absurd.
But the police are always there. There's never a day that the police aren't there. So it's just like you can see the values that we have as a city right now where there isn't, I mean, they're literally parked on the walkway, in the courtyards. You cannot avoid them when you live in Nycha. And so considering the way that people live in Nycha with the police, they're probably much more affected than anybody else in the city. But somehow we're chalking this up to, a whole bunch of people who don't understand what it's like to live in these conditions.
And I want to also call out PAL, since you're talking about the police. There's a daycare center in Queensbridge, where 170 kids from Queensbridge go, and PAL rents it out. But now the stove in that daycare is disconnected and doesn't work. So now you have kids who are coming who probably don't have a hot meal, and all those things in their home, and they come to daycare and can't get a hot meal, can't get a hot lunch because the stove can't be connected. But PAL's paying the rent, and they're not fighting Nycha. So they're not going to Nycha and saying, hey, what's going on and why are you not repairing the place? The place actually is falling apart somewhat. The kids can't even really socially distance. But the PAL is not advocating for that center. They're part of the problem. So they got funding for this. Isn't that money being thrown away or being wasted if you're not advocating and fighting Nycha to get something built for these kids?
Yeah.
And then I also want to say I understand Jacob Reese is being renovated, which is incredible. Jacob Reese is being renovated. That's nice for Jacob Reese. But if the city could find money to close down Jacob Reese and do I don't know how many $1 million renovation when people in the development right there can't get an exterminator to come to their house. This is insane. Then another program popped up in Queensbridge. Another program. And they got their office fixed. Wow. Right, it's a new program. They did the basketball tournament the other day. They got somebody from 105.7, a DJ or whatever, running the program. And all of a sudden, their office got fixed. So I'm like, we're going down to the manager's office every Friday to fight. How are these people getting repairs and getting stuff done, and the residents who live there can't get nothing done?
Well, that's a good question.
The devil's in the details. Look at who the contractors are. Look who the developer is, and see where their money, who they donate to.
Right.
Some of that is backdoor deals.
Sure.
The city's so corrupt.
Sure. I mean, it's a shame the PAL, can't do more about that. If they really cared, but you could put a car out there and watch these kids play ball and sort of terrorize them, but you can't follow through to find out why a daycare that you're spending money every month for is not really operating and servicing the community.
But if people from the neighborhood were given that position and given that resources instead of the police, I think you'd see that we'd be able to do so much more, and we'd have more passion in protecting what we're supposed to be doing. Right? You want to provide athletic, opportunities to children. How can you do that with the space being closed down or not being able to, provide daycare? People, if that's their home, they want to care for that. They want to protect that more than anybody else. But we're not seeing that from the agency. We're not seeing that from the PAL. We're not seeing that from these people or these organizations that come into our communities and say they want to do the good work, and then they fall short whenever things get tough.
But Lorenzo, why isn't there a shared responsibility with the PAL? Just like what you're saying, with like I as a mother would want to come in and help out with the program and do some teaching, or maybe even coach a girls basketball team alongside of them.
It's the nature of the agency. The nature of the agency,
they don't want anybody.
Its priority is not to protect us. It's to protect land. It's to protect laws.
Property.
So laws have never protected black and brown bodies first and foremost.
Very true.
They have an agenda, and if they people probably asked, oh, we want some community engagement, we'll throw you a PAL center. We want some money, we'll throw you a few $1,000s. No, we're done asking now. We want to take the agency, we want to take all that money, all these fake asks and these fake gives that you've been taking, and we want to make sure that that's ours, and we get to make the decision from here on out. And so it's a tough decision, and it's a tough way to come at it, especially from elected officials. a whole bunch of people don't deal with the issues that we deal with at NYCHA. This is without a doubt, it's like hands down a decision that we want to make in NYCHA. Then everybody around us is like, oh, we're not sure. You don't deal with these problems. They don't understand what it's like to live there.
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, these are hard decisions that we've had to live with for years. Where were you at when we were dying? I mean, we're out here killing each other. But where are the answers from the government? The police? They definitely didn't talk to us. We were having a poetry slam right in the basketball court. The police, right as soon as we pulled up, just pulled up, started flashing their lights.
Wow.
Like, that's not going to intimidate some kids from being involved in that? I mean, like these are obvious things that they don't prioritize the same things we need to prioritize. And so we constantly fight for an agency that doesn't want to fight for us. I can't understand the logic in it. And a lot of the times it's young people that agree off the bat. But when you've lived with those being the only options that you've ever received for your entire life, I understand it's difficult, but we're willing to do that work. So I'm starting off, and I'm speaking to the camera now, I'm speaking to the viewers. If you see these problems in your neighborhood, fight as hard as you can. We're here. We're all here. Connect. Lorenzo Brea 26 at Instagram and
Right,
Twitter.
okay.
Reach out to me. Reach out to Sugar Ray. Reach out to Stan. Reach out to One NYCHA. We're a net here trying to make something happen for our communities first and foremost.
So, Lorenzo, say that again.
Coalition too.
Yes, that's
Manhattan.
right. Yeah.
Occupy NYCHA, a whole
Absolutely.
lot of people. There is power in organizing.
Yep.
And if the people organize, that's when we get stuff done.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
shout out to all the organizers, whether you're doing BLM, public housing, both. I do both.
Cancel
But
rent,
whatever you're
DSA.
doing for the people, shout out and keep it going, because we are the ones that make the difference. We vote you in, we'll vote you out.
That's right.
And we're gonna hold y'all accountable too. We having guests here that's running for office, and you get in, we're gonna be making sure you're doing what you're gonna
Absolutely.
do.
That's
You know,
right.
because it's business, right? It's really business
And I
first
think
and foremost.
we have to go beyond the job description. I'm running a lot behind, next to a lot of people that are, I can't figure out, what their story is or, what they're really about. And you can have a good heart, you can have a good resume, you can have a good history in the community, but are you willing to be out there past your bedtime, knocking on doors like it's a campaign, even if you lose?
Exactly.
10 years from now, how hard will you be fighting for our community? I'm not leaving. And they could stay as well. It's just that how hard are you fighting to incorporate the people who have been disaffected by the system?
Goes back to what I was
We've been
saying.
beaten
present,
by the
Right.
system.
being present. Yeah. Oh, what happened?
So now, did we lose the
Okay.
camera shot? Okay, we back on.
Oh, how'd that happen?
There we are.
Oops.
Keep going, keep going.
Keep going. So I just want to say, Lorenzo, you definitely in a real tough campaign with a lot of great competition, working with a lot of great people. Shout out to Julia Foreman and all the rest who are running in that district. I know there's a member from DSA that's probably going to be running in that district. Brent O'Leary, I believe, is another competitor. So you got some tough competition. But I will say, for a young guy, your future is bright. In the political world. At 21, starting out like you are. If you should win this election, that's wonderful. But if you should not, I still think the future is really bright.
Well, I'm not going to say if. I'm going to say best of luck, break a leg,
right.
and
Yeah.
we're rooting for you.
That's right. That's right.
Okay? And once again, you are watching One NYCHA with Saundrea Coleman, Stan Morse. Rock is not here.
Miss your brother.
I'm sitting
Miss you,
in.
Rock.
He's
Them
listening.
leather suspenders.
I'm ESP Speaks filling in for him this week, and we're here with Lorenzo Brea, and he is running for New York City Council, District 26.
Thank you.
And you know what? To tie things up, because we are looking at an
Yeah.
hour.
About to be done.
So, Saundrea, what do you got going on this week? Because you're the hardest working woman in New York City, darling.
Absolutely.
You got everything happening.
Just ask him for the strength. That's all.
That's all right. Yes,
Every
he'll
day.
Give it to you. He'll give it to you.
UES for BLM, of course. Still organizing that. It's getting cold. The weather's changing, so we will. We're assessing things, but we still out there every night at 7 p.m.
How many days? That's like what,
120, about 124 maybe.
Amazing.
now.
That's
Girl.
amazing. Big
Since
shout
June
out.
2nd.
That's
Since June
dedication.
2nd. Give them the beat.
And she out there with her megaphone, getting the whole beat.
Yes,
right there.
yes.
She out there with her megaphone, tearing it
Yeah.
up. And Stan, what are you up to?
Oh, I'm not finished.
She got more.
See,
And
Martha's
Saundrea got
working
more.
out there.
No,
Go ahead,
and
Saundrea.
looking to, do some food for some, because our seniors are pretty much taken care of with the food.
Good.
But there are some residents that are, have issues financially. So I work with my council member's office to try to give food at least once a month, a bag of food from a pantry. So I'm waiting on a call back from that. And I'm actually looking into doing something for the seniors for early voting.
We're going to have
To
to
get
team
them
up on something, especially
yes.
with this holiday.
Oh,
thing.
yeah. And just, whatever I got to do, I'm on a community board. I'm not going to say the board, but I'm on a community board. So, you have to make those meetings. But I just also want to lift up our guests for next week, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
That's okay.
So next week, we have Manny Martinez, resident council president of Jamaica Houses, coming through.
Yes.
Come through.
Come through. We're going to continue the conversation we started with Claudia. So
Yeah.
this should be very interesting.
All right. Stan, what you got going on, babe?
We're going to be delivering food again in Ravenswood on Wednesday, food in Queensbridge on Friday. Hope there's no letter from Trump in those boxes, so we'll see how that goes. And then we're going to have a meeting this week for my Queensborough president campaign. We meet every other Wednesday to kind of keep the campaign going. And we're looking to have a fundraiser shortly, within the next 3 weeks. So we'll be talking more about that. And folks have to give if they want people like me or Lorenzo or some of the other folks that we had on this show to run. It is not going to happen if the community does not support us. So we're not going to get big donations from anybody else. So it has to be those small donations like Lorenzo's been getting, or we don't stand a chance to win. So I'll be having more information about that, and we're going to keep this fight going.
Well, we're looking forward to it. And Lorenzo, you have anything going on?
Tell them where
that
they
you wanna
can
add?
vote. How can they give money to your campaign?
That's right.
I mean, if you guys find me on social media, Lorenzo Brea 26 on Twitter and Instagram, Lorenzo Brea on Facebook. Also, my email is Brea, BREA, @votelorenzo.com. You guys can email me, be a part of our mailing list, keep getting updates about what's going on in the community, being part of these actions as well. These actions are extremely important. Black Lives Matter, Against ICE, as well as Community Building Fridays and giving out food and clothing. But also, I do want to leave you guys with a message, and that is to constantly keep in mind, this is love right here. I really appreciate being on the show with you guys, and so as we feel love, we want to give love, and so I continue to find out where love may not be getting received, and it tends to be people that look like me, that are my age, that are hustling, go-getters, money makers, that just so happen to maybe out of school or selling drugs. So to the point where we can appreciate them, understand their circumstances, and incorporate them in anything that happens in our community is where we'll see these rippling effects with seniors, with the youth, with the police, with public safety, with housing, anything. We have the answers, we have the energy, take advantage of us. And we're a part of that movement. So now that you have my contact, reach out to me and find out how we can make that happen.
Awesome.
Okay. And
Awesome.
we're going to put all of that information in the field for you when we tie up the show. We want to thank you once again for joining us for One Nycha. Remember, you can check us out on Spotify. You can get a rebroadcast on Facebook. You can also check us out on our YouTube channel, which is One Nycha. Click, like, and subscribe. You are also on Anchor, Breaker, Radio Public, and Google Podcasts.
Yeah. One Nycha TV, YouTube.
And
One Nycha, One Nycha.
TV.
Yes.
YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, if we're all done,
We're
we'll
all done.
see you next time.
Let's lift off.
Remember, be positive and test negative. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Shout out to Rock. He started all this for the vision. Said be good, Rock.